Going live. Welcome aboard, everybody. It is Sunday night. It is time for our third class in couples counseling. And so, of course, I'm joined here by Kelly Wood. So, hi, Kelly. How are you?
Hi, Richard. I'm great. Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining us.
And it's certainly good to see everybody. Below this video is, of course, the chat box. And so you can type any questions or anything you have there in the chat box. Technical questions regarding product delivery and things like that, you're going to have to talk to Stephanie in the office. So just email the office, richard@subliminalscience.com, and any of those things can be sorted out with Stephanie in the office. It's hard to do that while teaching a class. So there you go. It's great to have everybody, though. I gave everybody in the room an assignment last week, and the assignment was my favorite assignment to give to couples that I've done in my own life as well, and that is to create a treasure chest. So my question, of course, is, did you create a treasure chest with either any of the couples that you're working with or even in your own life as well? And so I'd love to hear some feedback from you, or at least read some feedback from you. So type in the chat box if you gave that assignment to any of the couples you worked with or used it in your own life, and sort of what was the response, what was the outcome. By the way, Kelly, you actually implemented that in your own life, didn't you? Or with some clients?
Both. I had a young child that I was working with, a 9-year-old, and he presented with some problems at school. And as a result, he's been coming home calling himself stupid and an idiot. And so I gave him a journal and made it be his treasure chest, and we started out with the very first wonderful thing that I posted in there is that he was an expert at unlocking my bathroom door because it was kind of tricky, and he figured it out. So he was really pleased with that. He ran to his mother after the session and showed it to her, and they were quite excited to fill it up with great stuff. And he was already figuring out what he would write about himself. So it was excellent. And I used my treasure chest too. It was interesting because I discovered a strength that is generational. My mother's from Finland, and there is a word, a national word in Finland. It's called sisu, S-I-S-U, and it really defines perseverance and determination, that spirit of never giving up, which, of course, the Finns had to have in order to keep Russia from swallowing them. And
or just from surviving the darn cold winters and the dark nights.
That's right. And so I tapped into sisu when I was making some hypnosis recordings for clients earlier this weekend, and I had some technical glitches, and I just hung in there, and I did not give up, and I finished them. So that felt great.
Awesome. I'd like to see if anybody gave that assignment. Now, maybe you didn't give the assignment. Maybe you thought about it. But if you did give that assignment to any of your clients last week, type that in the chat box. It's always interesting to know who's able to follow through on some of those things. And if you didn't use that assignment with a client, let me encourage you this week to use it in your own life as well. By the way, this is an exercise that could be useful in couples counseling. In fact, that's why I've used it primarily. It can also be useful in parent-child relationships and adaptation of it. And it could even be used as a tool for opening communication. I've done over the last several years a fair amount of corporate consulting, and rather than calling it, the XYZ Corporation Treasure Chest, where we, it's just you put a notebook out in the office where everybody goes through and write down one thing each day that you value about one of your coworkers or colleagues or partners. And boy, it's really interesting when a team comes together to identify the strengths of each other, and that's really an awesome activity, something that kind of follows that positive psychology model but with a corporate application. And it's a tool that really can be useful in a number of different ways. And so guest 110, you did assign it with a client. That's awesome. And just to sort this out, you can change your name, so you're not a number. You can click where you're typing in the chat box where it says guest number whatever. You can click on that. It opens up another box, and you can actually change it to your real name. So, but I think that was you, Donna. So, that's Lori. Hi, Lori. By the way, Lori, I referred you a client this week, so I hope they follow through, and I hope they call, and I hope they schedule an appointment with you. They asked me, somebody called me this week and said, do you know a therapist in Tulsa who is competent? That was actually what they asked. And so I said, yes, Lori Lenore. Let me get her number. So I hope that the referral follows through for you. But there are lots of applications to that. So if you didn't use that assignment last week, it would be great to see if you could try to implement it in the next week or two. All right, let's spend a little bit of time, Kelly, talking about the past and the present and the future. I'm a big fan of listening to NPR. I've been listening to NPR probably most of my adult life. And in fact, I just got done listening to my favorite NPR show, which is, of course, Wait, Don't Tell Me, with Bill Curtis out of Chicago. And if you're not a big NPR fan, I encourage you to tune in Sunday afternoons and listen to the program Wait, Don't Tell Me, because it's actually my favorite NPR show. Of course, All Things Considered is one of those shows that's a classic, along with Marketplace and some of those. I listen to them probably just about every single day, that drive time home and out and about the town in the car. And when I'm not in the car, I even listen at home. But sometimes you hear the most fascinating stories. And I was actually listening to one of the stories about a Harvard researcher who created an app. There was an app for the phone. And what it did is it basically would send a message to people. So if you had this app on your phone, it was to measure mindfulness, okay? And so it would just send you random questionnaires about what you were doing at the moment. So it would just that's the sound of people coming out of my AOL account, like it's 1998 or something. So let me
Goodbye.
Let me close off that AOL window. But what it would do is it would send people a message and say, basically, what are you doing at this moment? What are you thinking about? What are you feeling? What are you sensing at this moment? And then they would report back. The thing about it, because they created a mobile app to collect this data and research, they were able, for the course of the study, they were able to get about 18,000 participants. Now, a study of 100 in academics is considered a statistically significant sample, but they were able to get 18,000 people. That's just an enormous sample. It was really pretty cool. And so the question basically was, what are you doing right now and what are you thinking about right now? And they found that the vast majority of the people, most of the time, it's about 60% of the time, spends their time mentally in the future. So most of the people, most of the time, are spending 60% of their time in the future. That's fascinating. And if they weren't thinking about the future, for example, they would report back, well, I guess they were doing this while texting and driving. I'm in my car and I'm thinking about the meeting I'm late for, right? So it would literally measure real time at random times 18,000 people and what they were doing. And most people, most of the time, were thinking about the future. In other words, their minds were not present in the moment. Their mental images and pictures and thoughts and all of the things that accompany that were dwelling on, by the way, something that hasn't happened yet. If their minds weren't dwelling on the future, the vast majority of people, if they weren't thinking about the future, were thinking about the past. About 30% of the time. That leaves about 10% of the time. And most of the people, most of the time, were only thinking about the present about 10% of the time. That's fascinating. So most people, most of the time, are not thinking about the present moment. But as we mentioned, as we talked about mindfulness last week, the only time that we have is actually right now. Yesterday's history, tomorrow's a mystery. All we have is the present, and that's why it's a gift. My favorite quote, attributed most recently to the great master Oogway, who, by the way, of course, is the turtle from Kung Fu Panda. But I think that the proper attribution actually is to Eleanor Roosevelt. So if you're wondering who actually said it, it has been attributed to her in a number of different places. And I don't know if that's true either. There are a lot of things you read on the internet that aren't necessarily true. One of my favorite quotes by Abraham Lincoln, of course, is don't believe everything you read on the internet. But that little saying, whoever actually made it up, really is pretty awesome. So we actually spend most of our time in the past. And so what we need to do with clients is help them to create the habit out of being in the present. That's what a mindfulness practice is. It is really about creating a habit. And a habit, by the way, takes about 21 days. They say if every morning for the last 30 years or 40 years or 50 years or 60 years, however old you are, you got out of bed and put your left leg in the pants first, you can change that habit by putting your right leg in the pants first for 21 days. But if you try to make a significant change like that, a lifelong pattern, you'll find that until you cultivate a new habit, it's really difficult to do. And so mindfulness, the key word here really is cultivating. It's all about cultivating an ability to bring yourself back to the present. And so these Harvard researchers with their app, they also included a signal, a bell. In fact, Kelly, you have one of these bells on your phone. I'm going to let you talk about it in a minute. The other day I was talking to Kelly about some other stuff, and suddenly there was some sort of bell sound. I'm like, what is that? She said, oh, that's my mindfulness bell. It reminds me to practice mindfulness. Sends her random messages, apparently. I think that's pretty cool. And that's really what these Harvard researchers were doing. And when people were taught to cultivate, intentionally take a moment to be mindful, it became habit. And people were able to spend then, after training, over half of their time focusing on the present moment. I think it's really a pretty interesting learning experience because it shows us that our natural inclination is to simply swim in our thoughts without regard to whether or not they're in the future or the past. And think about the couples you work with. This is a major issue for couples. What's Bob or what's Bertha going to be like when I get home? Are they going to be mad? Are they going to discover this? Are they going to be happy? Are they going to whatever? Or they're dwelling in the past. I don't know if I can trust Bob today because, last week I found him, chatting on internet porn sites, or because, 18 years ago he was a male dancer. I actually saw that the other day. I was watching one of these dating shows. It was The Millionaire Matchmaker on Bravo, in case you wondered, what does Richard watch on a Sunday night when he's trying not to think about deep stuff? And I love The Millionaire Matchmaker. It's my favorite Bravo show. So, oddly enough, she's had a couple of hypnotists on it. Not me, but a couple of hypnotists. So, she found she hooked these people up. They were the perfect couple. They had gone on many dates together, but they wouldn't commit. And the reason why he wanted to commit, but she wouldn't commit, because like 10 years before he had paid for college part-time as a male dancer or something like that. So clearly her mind was in the past. So we can see how not being mindful truly impacts couples. And of course, again, the simplest way to practice mindfulness, if you don't have a nifty device like Kelly's, is just to take some time to intentionally pay attention to the breath. To know what the breath is like. So by the way, do that right now. You're participating in this webinar. Pay attention to your breath. As you watch the webinar, study your breathing. Notice, is your breath shallow, or is it deep? Is it fast? Is it smooth and rhythmic? You're not evaluating whether it's a good breath or a bad breath. Just pay attention to it, because the breath signifies this moment. And by getting in that habit, we can cultivate mindfulness. Kelly, tell me about your little timer device.
This is actually a free app. I have an Android phone, and so I just went on the Google store and picked it up. It's a mindfulness bell, and this is what it looks like. I'll show it here. And you can set it for random alerts for you. I have it set on roughly an hour, but it's never exactly an hour, so I don't anticipate it. And I've had it for several months now, and I've always been surprised when it goes off. And you can decide what you want to do when you use something like this. I take 3 deep breaths. No matter where I am, I stop and I just center myself. And I found that doing this periodically throughout the day just helps me stay ahead of tension. It helps me stay ahead of stress, and it brings me right back into the moment every time. So what a wonderful tool. I share it with all of my clients, because I think it's very important to not only give them the tools, but make the case about why being mindful in this way can help them. And there's an awesome video, an RSA animate video. You might be familiar with those videos. They have the illustrations along with the audio, and it's called The Secret Powers of Time. I'm going to share it here in the chat room, the link for it.
You can find it on YouTube, correct?
Yep, you can find it on YouTube. And I really like a model that they present in this. The model of time is that we exist in any one of 6 different states, time-wise. We're either currently in the past in a negative state, or in the past in a positive state, in the future in a negative state, or in the future in a positive state, or we're in the here and now in either a positive or negative state. And I'll actually make a diagram of this for my clients, and then I'll ask them, where are you right now? And when they can see this visual model of it, they quickly understand. We might even talk about some examples like Richard did earlier about, wow, if we're reminiscing about a great vacation, we're in the past in a positive state. But if we're regurgitating some terrible thing that our spouse did 10 years ago, we're there in a negative state. Likewise, if we're anticipating some problem, we're worrying, we're in the future in a negative state. Or if we're looking forward to the weekend, we're in the future in a positive state. And our goal is to teach them to come right into the moment, come into the here and now. And sometimes that might be a negative thing. Maybe there's some stuff going down that's unpleasant. But for the most of the time, it's a good place. It can be a neutral place too. And I think using that model is very effective. It gives people something to grasp visually, and then they can use that tool maybe in conjunction with something like the mindfulness bell, and they can stop and ask themselves, where am I right now? Chances are, if they're in an anxious state, in a state of depression, they're not being in the moment.
Now, these are obviously great exercises for therapy with an individual. I'm going to ask what I think is a rhetorical or an obvious question here, but let you answer anyway. Can these tools that are useful for training an individual be useful for training a couple to be mindful together? For example, Kelly and I actually started today by having just a mindful moment where we both got in sync with the very present moment. It was a great way to begin, especially since I was dwelling on the past. Last night, my feet hurt from standing too long. I just had foot surgery about 8 weeks ago, for those who don't know. My foot is actually up on my desk with an ice pack on it. And that physical distress all day long is something that really doesn't affect me when I'm sitting here doing a webinar. And yet I was carrying that negative energy into class with me. So Kelly and I spent some time as a couple, a teaching couple, getting into sync. Can you teach mindfulness to couples and have them practice becoming mindfully aware together?
Absolutely. One of the things I do with couples is I have them choose together a magic word that could serve as a pattern interrupt, and that magic word would remind them. They could remind each other that, where are you right now? And then they could have a mindful moment together. And it's very effective. And because they pick a magic word, there's no problem about it being an insult or a command even. It's just a reminder and a kind request that let's step into this moment together and center ourselves.
By the way, it's sort of related, but a little bit off the track too. I had a customer service issue with a company that I do business with. And so I went to find the customer service email. And the email for customer service or customer support is delight@ABC Corporation. I thought that was really fascinating.
Right.
Because most of the people using that address are probably either frustrated or angry. And so I got the automated reply back, which said, the email from Delight at ABC Company said, we're delighted that you wrote us. We understand that this is a form letter. This is to let you know that we've received your reply, but one of our delightful representatives will give you a delightful response within a timely manner. Well, instead of waiting angrily for my response email, I had a smile on my face, and so those pattern interrupts is the last thing I would expect the email address for a company to be. Uh, you know, can be kind of like that. A couple could pick a word where if they both said delight, it was at that moment that they were going to practice being in the present or something like that.
Yeah, and I think that that also aligns them with each other because no one else knows what that word means. This is one special thing that they share.
Sure. Now, we've actually talked about a lot of things, and I want to make sure there's plenty of time for questions and answers too. So we've actually talked about a lot of techniques and ideas already today, and Kelly's going to share with us the emotional detox, which is one of my favorite techniques for mindfully creating a positive resource state in the present. Um, so if you have any questions, feel free to type them in the chat box, and after Kelly shares this or demonstrates, we'll be more than happy to answer any questions that you have, because I want to make sure that those of you who are participating have an opportunity to ask for any clarification or even throw in a profound thought or an insight or an application of how you use the material, because that's a great way to learn from each other. So, Kelly, a lot of people have heard of this emotional detox. What is it? How does it work? And can we do it?
Anybody can do it. I've even taught this to young children. It's amazing. Of course, you know, I modify it for them. But what this is an anchor collapse. It's an NLP technique that actually creates a physiological shift in the mind and in the body. So it can be used for discharging negative emotions. It can be used for relieving the suffering from pain. There's a lot of different applications for it. And I usually preface the technique itself by explaining some of the neuroplasticity of the brain to the clients, and explaining especially if they're struggling with the same old complaints, the same old things that have just become entrenched, and describing to them how those neural pathways, those nets, have really become well trodden in their mind, just like a path in the woods would. So much that when a person has tromped on that over and over, they forget there's other ways of going through the woods. And this emotional detox can provide that for them. So it's as simple as bringing up whatever it is that's bothering you. And by the way, this is an excellent technique for therapists to use to be able to clear yourself before and between clients. Anytime, like what happened here with Richard earlier when he wasn't feeling great about his foot, this would have been a perfect exercise too. We bring the topic to mind, whatever it is that's bothering us. And of course, we understand as therapists the value of emotions, that many of them are useful and may even need to be attended to. But I'm talking about the ones that are entrenched and that are circular and that are doing those loops, then we don't need to be suffering. So we bring it up. We can even calibrate it, see how strong it is. So go ahead and just think of something right now that's maybe bothering you, something, a challenge you're dealing with or you're worrying about. Just take a moment to just do that. And as you do, I want you just to make a fist with one of your hands. It doesn't matter which one it is. And just imagine all those feelings just going right down into that fist. And then release it. And now just take a nice deep cleansing breath. Breathe in, and you can gently close your
Hey, Kelly, it seems like your microphone is dead, which oddly is only something that seems to happen when Kelly's doing a demonstration. So you might log out and log back in. And those of you who are following along with Kelly, simply breathe. Take a minute here while she logs out and logs back in to just pay attention to the breath. I mean, that's really what mindfulness is all about. Studying the way it feels to breathe the air in, what it feels like to exhale the air. Just use this time to be mindful of the moment. In fact, it's always awesome to earn CEU hours with the eyes closed. I'm not sure if your microphone works, Kelly. Kelly has officially logged out, and she'll log back in just a moment. Seems to be the answer to all tech problems. But as I always say, as long as we're breathing, we're actually okay. And so right now, you're breathing in, breathing out, paying attention to the breath. Maybe the eyes are open, maybe the eyes are closed. It doesn't really make a bit of difference. Because as you pay attention to the moment, you have the opportunity to practice mindfulness. Kelly's back.
I'm back. I'm sorry. You know, there's something about me doing processes here with you guys.
I don't know what it is. It's the gremlins. But why don't you just continue where we are? We've just been taking a moment to practice mindfulness.
Okay, that's great. And so, where did you lose me? Did you guys put those negative feelings in one fist? Did you get that far?
I think so. I think that's right where we were.
Okay, well, let's just go ahead and bring up some struggle that you have, some challenge, some worry. Just let yourself visit with that. And can you still hear me? Wow.
You're doing great.
Okay. Okay. I think just the video changes, so I'm not sure if I'm being heard.
I turned mine off so that people don't hear me breathing.
Okay, good. So as you're just visiting with that thought, you might even kind of measure it. Sometimes we like to calibrate the level of distress that we feel over something. And then as you're doing that, with one of your hands, just make a fist. Just imagine all those feelings just flowing right into that fist. We're only just going to hold that for a few moments. And then release it. And like you take a nice deep cleansing breath, just breathing in and out. You might even close your eyes and open them, or open your eyes and close them. It doesn't really matter. Next, I'd like you to allow yourself to step into your idea of a perfect day. You're doing something that you really love. You feel wonderful. Maybe you're there by yourself. Maybe you're there with someone you love. You're at the perfect weight. It is a great hair day. Just really give yourself permission to notice everything that you enjoy about this. And as you're feeling all those great feelings moving through your mind and your body, with your other hand, make a fist. And we're just going to anchor those feelings in that fist. That's right. And then just relax your hand. Take another one of those nice deep cleansing breaths. And we just let a little bit of time go by here. You might imagine a circle and put a triangle inside that circle and a square inside that. And then I want you to take both hands and make fists out of them. We'll hold them for a count of 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. Release them. One more nice cleansing breath. Just noticing how good that feels. Feels great to feel like that, doesn't it? And you might even go back to that original troubling thought and see where it went. Chances are that it's reduced quite a bit. It might even be gone. When I do this exercise, it disappears completely over my shoulder. It's amazing. How are you feeling, Richard?
I feel very relaxed, very good.
Yeah, it feels good. And what we actually did was make an actual physiological shift in the brain where we were able to detour off that old worry, that old distressing thought that's been entrenched there because it's been activated over and over. And what I really like about this technique is that it's so malleable. You can pick any positive state, any positive resource state there. So perhaps you wanted to feel really confident. Perhaps you want to feel romantic. Can you imagine the application of this, teaching this to a couple who are having troubles in the bedroom? They can let go of all of the things that keep them from being close, and they can engage in just a close and romantic feeling instead, if they so choose to. Or maybe they want to be energized. You can choose. And I found that clients really like things that lets them make the choice because that's where they get control. So I'd encourage you to practice this emotional detox technique. I have a little script for it. I can, Richard, I'll send to you and you can share with people. But
right, even post a video of Michael Elner guiding people through that whole process, so you can see how Michael does it.
Yeah, and you'll find that you put your own little spin on it. But the best thing is the experiential application of it. Use it yourself. I've been recovering for almost 3 months now from a shoulder dislocation, and this particular technique has been phenomenal, allowing me to not use any pain medications. So have fun with it too.
Sure. Now, let me ask you a question. You've used some language that I'm familiar with and that any of the hypnotists here in the room are familiar with. But people who aren't familiar with hypnosis probably aren't sure what anchoring is and some other things. In fact, I think a lot of people sometimes just have questions about hypnosis and what it is and why it's valuable. And so I want to talk about some of those things.
Great.
But it looks like people were able to follow along that process. Renee said yes, she did in fact put it in the fist, and you rejoined the room, and so hopefully you were able to go out of that process. On our webpage here, right below the chat box, you'll find the links and the videos and everything that we've talked about. Everything's on the same page, and I'll make sure that I put a video of Michael Elmer going through that process as well, because it's something I think is certainly worth teaching clients. Now, most people know that you and I both are clinical hypnotherapists. I learned hypnosis when I was actually doing my practicum in graduate school. I was lucky that my, absolutely, the treasure chest with divorced parents-child relationships is actually pretty cool. That can definitely be adapted in a number of different ways for parents and children. But a lot of times people ask me questions about hypnosis, and like I said, I was lucky enough in graduate school. My clinical supervisor who did my practicum supervision was actually a student of Milton Erickson's, and who was one of the members of ASH, the American Society of Clinical Hypnotists, affiliated with the American Psychological Association. But for some reason, people think of hypnosis and they think of Hollywood. They think of Dracula with his, saying, look into my eye, deep into my eye, or, Bela Lugosi with his pendulum, or the old Svengali story. Svengali, of course, was a popular movie that's been remade a number of different times, a scary movie because Svengali tricks the beautiful Trilby into singing with her beautiful voice, but she can only perform when she's under his evil spell, and then he leaves her and she becomes homeless, and all kinds of horrible things happen. I don't remember the exact story. And then Hollywood portrayals like Office Space, where the hypnotist dies in the middle of the session, and the guy is stuck in hypnosis. Hypnosis is one of those words that really doesn't mean anything that Hollywood has portrayed. Hypnosis actually is a word that really describes a lot of different ways to utilize trance states. And trance, again, is not Igor following, in a Bela Lugosi movie from the 1950s mindlessly. We all have trance. We have our parenting trance, our anxiety trance, our driving trance. The other day I was driving in the rain, and my wife was talking to me, and there were things going on, but I blocked all of that out as if it wasn't even happening, and really focused on the driving on the highway, and I have no clue what was going on and what people were saying. So I had to, after we got where I was going, I said, I'm sorry, I wasn't paying attention. I have no clue what you just said, and it sounded important. So why don't you tell me again, because I was in I need to focus so we don't die trance. So anytime a client, I meet therapists who say, well, I don't do hypnosis. Well, anytime you take a client who has stress in the outside world and you bring them into a very nice therapist's office where they leave their problems outside of the doors for an hour in a cubicle and spend an hour in a relaxed state processing emotions, feelings, sensations, and awarenesses, whether we ever call that hypnosis or not, it is a hypnotic state. And we can learn ways to use these resources. Obviously, the formal way to learn is to take a hypnosis certification course. We actually offer a number of those, both online and in person, or come to the HypnoThoughts convention where Kelly and I are teaching this with thousands of other people in Las Vegas. Where I think we might actually hit 1,000 this year. The numbers look pretty good. But Kelly, can you tell us a little bit about hypnosis and how you use it with couples and why it can be a valuable tool for anyone working with couples?
Well, one of the things I do is explain to people hypnotic influence and how, they're under the influence of each other just merely by being important to each other. Parents have hypnotic influence. Other icons in our life have hypnotic influence. So when they understand that the power that they hold over each other with their words, with their nonverbal communication, they really start to appreciate that they have a responsibility towards how they're influencing each other. And then I proceed to help them set aside their judgmental processes that are interfering with them with really connecting on that emotional level. And that's, I think, is one of the best usages of hypnosis. It kind of removes that outside distractions that we all use to, avoid having to deal with the real issues. And hypnosis allows a venue to be able to do that very quickly. It can also be really fun. They enjoy it. They're intrigued with it. And for the most part, it feels good. We're talking about accessing that area of the mind where problems can be solved, where solutions can happen simultaneously. It's amazing how quickly it works.
And some people say if they don't have a Hollywood perception, they have seen the stage hypnotist have people doing silly things. Remember, that's just a giant game of Simon Says. People ask me about stage hypnosis, and I simply tell them this. I can get 20 people act goofy in front of an audience of 200 any day of the week without hypnosis. It's called karaoke night. And so, people are looking for their 15 minutes of fun to get out, to let loose, and, it may be called hypnosis. It's certainly a different set of strategies, even though it may be the same phenomena that we're using in our offices for therapeutic purposes. So if anybody ever has any questions about the use of hypnosis, you can, in fact, I'll even type it in here. It's a great place for therapists to ask questions. ICBCHgroup.com. And that's a group that I facilitate. It's on Facebook. ICBCHgroup.com. I'll take you to our Facebook page. About 3,500 members. Many of them are also licensed therapists, in addition to clinical hypnotists who can answer any questions you might have. Now, one of the other things that you alluded to here, Kelly, is that when we're working with doing trance work or by the way, a lot of mental health professionals might recognize the term trance work. Michael Yapko, who's both a psychologist and a licensed marriage and family therapist, an expert on depression, who's written numerous textbooks of mental health, actually wrote what's probably the most popular training manual or book in hypnosis, and that's called trance work. Sounds like in couples counseling or even parent-child relationships, it's not just hypnotizing people to do something or take a specific action, but it's actually breaking the trance states. A therapeutic approach is helping people to find their own identity apart from the spousal relationship or a previous negative relationship. And it sounds like unhypnotizing people is as important in therapy as hypnotizing people. Any thoughts on that, Kelly?
I agree. I think we can actually call ourselves dehypnotists often. And sure. And I've had clients say that, wow, it feels like I woke up.
Okay. Now, one of the other techniques that we wanted to share tonight, by the way, notice all 3 weeks here, what we've really been doing is trying to give you different techniques, strategies that you can actually bring back to the work that you do with couples. And we've covered a lot of content in all of these courses, and we're sort of just stacking these things out there. But that's why you have access to these videos over and over again. I used Adobe for week 1, so you're only going to have 4 weeks to view that. But the rest of these videos, I'll leave them here forever, and until I die and quit paying my server bill. And by the way, I don't plan on doing that for a long time. I'm 49, and my grandfather lived to be 98, so I figure there's a long time that these will be available online for you. But you can go back and review some of the things, whether it's emotional detox or whether it's really the habit of cultivating mindfulness or any of the other things that we've demonstrated. But Kelly, what is a mental rehearsal technique, and can you again share with us that strategy for getting unstuck from the past or the future and staying in the present?
Yes, and that term is probably familiar to you, mental rehearsal. You might even associate it with sports performance, because that's something that a lot of sports psychologists use with athletes. We use mental rehearsal to help people create a blueprint for what they want in the future, because we found that the mistake that a lot of people make is worrying about what's going to happen instead of what they want to happen. And this is very important because we know that we become whatever we're thinking of. Our bodies and our minds are always reacting to our thoughts and our beliefs. And so we want to make sure that we're engaging in more positive and hopeful thoughts and beliefs. And so a mental rehearsal technique can provide just that. And I often encourage couples to script what they would like the next day to be like, or the next week. Maybe imagine a wonderful experience that they share, or a nice meal together. And simply by allowing their creative imaginations to engage in this, it lays down that expectation. It lays down that blueprint, almost like a map, and making it much more easy for them to actually move into that and make that a reality. It's fun to do. I encourage them to come up with the details. The more details they put in it, the better. Maybe she's wearing that red dress. Maybe he smells really great. They can come up with those ideas, and they get really excited about it. And it's a fun exercise to do. You know, there was even a study, Richard, you probably are familiar with this one, the Cleveland Clinic did. They took some athletes, and they had one group do weight training. They had the other group just imagine doing a mental rehearsal of doing the weight training. And after a set amount of time, they measured the results, and they found that the group that had merely imagined it actually had more muscle development. So when we consider the power of our thoughts, you realize how important it is to be scripting a positive future for yourself.
Yeah, by the way, that wasn't just one isolated incident at the Cleveland Clinic. The motivation or the idea for such a study, I mean, who would even think such a thing could be possible, actually came from the East Germans and the Russians during the Cold War. There was a time when the Russian economy and East German economy, Eastern European economy was in such shambles that the athletes didn't have the resources and the materials to actually practice. But it was a matter of both political as well as internal pride for their athletes to be successful and bring home gold medals. And so it's interesting how the power of the mind in sports performance, strength training in particular, was something that the Russians, the East Germans really focused on during the Cold War because they had limited resources for actual training. By the way, now that we're getting into some weird history here, the latest rage in fitness here in America is, of course, the kettlebells, right? You go to any gym and kettlebell class. Well, kettlebells came out of, again, Russian Olympic training where the athletes didn't have, our gyms were filled up with all kinds of fancy equipment and stuff, but all they had was milk buckets or concrete buckets or whatever else. So that was what they used for strength training. So kettlebells and hypnosis, two things that won a lot of gold medals for both the East Germans and the Russians.
So Richard, last week we talked about assessing a couple's strengths. They could use mental rehearsal for strength training, couldn't they?
Absolutely. Absolutely. By the way, any questions, feel free to type them in the chat box. Again, Kelly and I have talked about lots of things, and I see people here in the chat room, and I can see, because Google tells me if people are actually watching this video cast, that you're all here. And so feel free to type any questions if you have any, because Kelly and I will be happy to answer them. All right, let's talk a little bit about kindness and generosity. You had some thoughts on kindness and generosity as being two traits that were significant. Why are those two traits significant, Kelly?
Well, obviously those are ones that people respond to. We all wish for kindness. We all wish to be treated kindly. And there's been some research that demonstrates that the couples that have longevity, but not just longevity, but have happiness and satisfaction in their marriage, they have those two traits, kindness and generosity, that they consciously exercise those two traits too. So I think that instilling those in our clients, in our couples that we're working with, is very important, and maybe even eliciting, assessing how they show kindness towards each other and generosity.
Now, you sent me an article a few weeks back. I don't know if you remember sending this to me, because you actually send me a lot of articles, which is good. I don't have to do any research anymore. I just wait for my email, and Kelly tells me what I should be reading. You sent me an article that was really pretty cool. It was about an elderly couple. I can't remember if they passed away or not, or if they were just sharing this. But he had written his wife, whether a card or a note or a letter, every single day for like 50 years. And there was even a picture of the pile of, when he was away on business, he would mail it. And if he was home, I guess he would leave it in the kitchen counter. But every single day for like 50 years or 60 years of marriage, boy, that really just shows kindness, or I guess it shows dependent personality disorder if you're a therapist. But do you remember that article?
Yes, I do, and it actually reminded me of my own parents. They're 85 and 86, and tomorrow is their 59th wedding anniversary, and I can seriously say this is a happy couple, and I see those two qualities being exercised, if not daily, at least weekly, between the two of them. They really take the time to be considerate of each other and each other's feelings. And I think this has been the recipe for their enduring marriage.
By the way, you always hear of happy couples, so I'll share a story of an unhappy couple. Since I know my mom's not watching, 1975, so 85, 95, 2005, it was 75. How long is that? 75, 85, 95, 2005, 40 years. My mom and my stepdad have been married for 40 years. They should have got divorced 39 years ago, but they didn't.
No.
They've been sniping at each other, arguing with each other for the last 40 years. And when I look at their relationship, I think to myself, wow, I wouldn't want to put myself through that. But a lot of couples do that. They don't practice kindness, compassion, and generosity towards each other. By the way, I'm not going to blame my mom or my stepdad. I actually can look back as an outside observer and say, while they're both awesome people, they haven't been kind to each other, and they haven't been generous with each other. And the result of that is they're not quite so happy.
Yeah, so Richard, how do you get couples to be kinder to each other?
Well, I actually try to practice cultivating kindness. Like you can cultivate the present moment, you can cultivate kindness as well. There's a meditation. It's a famous meditation. I mean, people who aren't meditators have practiced this, and it's called a loving kindness meditation. And it goes through 4 levels. It teaches a person how to be loving and kind, right? And so the first level is you take a minute, you think about somebody who has been important to you that isn't somebody you're really close to. Okay, maybe a writer or a speaker or somebody you admire. I mean, Martin Luther King, I don't know, somebody important to you, Jesus, or whoever, right? And then you come down the next level, and you during that first level, can you Can you create kind thoughts towards that person, right? And then the next level is, of course, a person who has been, important to you personally, a parent, a teacher, somebody else. Can you spend a minute and cultivate kind, positive, loving feelings towards that person? Well, the answer is yes. Then the third one is kind of interesting. I think of a person in your world, the bank teller, right? The waitress, the mailman. I mean, just somebody who's in your world, but you don't really pay attention to that person. Can you cultivate or practice loving, kind, compassionate thoughts towards that person? That people are amazed that even somebody who, to this point, they really haven't paid too much attention to, somebody who they can, have, as Carl Rogers called it, unconditional positive regards towards. Mm-hmm. And then the fourth level of this meditation is, now think of somebody who's wronged you or harmed you or you've had a difficult time with. And you've just practiced loving kindness towards those other people. Can you now create from inside love and kind thoughts towards that person? And when we have created what we call yes sets, yes, 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 the answer is yes, even if that person is not somebody who, before this moment, I had loving or kind thoughts towards. And so that loving kindness process, or meditation, if you want to use that word, is something that I've actually taught to couples, to individuals, and help them cultivate mindfulness, or a loving mindfulness.
I like that. You're actually getting them to strengthen their kindness muscle.
Correct. I like that term, the kindness muscle. Whose term is that, kindness muscle? How do you help people strengthen it?
It's Kelly Woods' term.
I thought. Never heard it before I met you.
Yeah. All right, our audience is kind of quiet. Don't you guys have any questions about hypnosis? Oh, thank you.
Yeah, we knew it was for your parents, not for mine.
Yeah, thank you, Shernay. They're a great couple.
Congratulations to my parents for proving that you don't actually have to resort to murder after 40 years. You're all these tragedies in the newspaper.
That's right. So on some level, they've been successful.
Right. No one's been arrested. No one's gone to the jail.
There you go. They're winners. I love it. All right. So, yeah, maybe talking a little bit about, the applications of hypnosis. Traditional hypnosis, formal hypnosis is not necessary. We do so many things in waking and conversational states that it's amazing. I think that allowing couples to play in your office is really important, because so many times they have what Michael Elner has described as a FDD, a fun deficiency disorder.
This is part of the course entitled Learn Hypno. Sorry.
That's all right.
The video in the chat room, but it auto-played.
Yeah, and they've forgotten how to laugh. They've forgotten to have fun with each other. And ironically, they can have fun with other people. They can have fun when they go out with the guys or fun with the girlfriends, but they've forgotten how to laugh and be lighthearted with one another. And so I really encourage that kind of an atmosphere, even when we're dealing with serious topics. And it's amazing how just using hypnotic techniques to elevate people's moods creates a shift in the whole atmosphere. And also, as I mentioned before, opens up those avenues so that they can come up with those creative ideas, those solutions, or even try things that they may not have been open to before, something silly.
By the way, somebody said, I don't know if it was Lori or if it was somebody else in the room. I can't remember who 110 is. I appreciate the focus on meditations for people to practice. We can do hypnosis, we can do meditation, we can do therapy without ever using the word therapy or meditation or hypnosis. We do all the time with clients. So sometimes people find themselves in a loaded environment. For example, in conservative Tulsa, Oklahoma, can you really start teaching people meditation? I teach people as a process, or this is an assignment. Not ever using the word meditation. It has its roots in a meditation. I mean, everything has its roots in a meditation. Why? Because, well, religion was, sometimes people say that to me. They say, well, are you teaching people religion? No. If a Buddhist saw what I did in my office, they would say that is not Buddhism. It's by the way, all religious traditions have used meditation as a way of practicing. Whether it's Buddhist meditation, whether it's Jesus who went in the Garden of Gethsemane to meditate, whether it was the psalmist, Jewish, who meditated on the Word. I mean, all religions have used a form of meditation. Here's why the roots are in religion, because up until modern science, we always looked to religion to explain the unexplainable, whether it was psychology or whether it was the weather. And so it doesn't surprise me at all that religious tradition has psychological solutions that are still useful and valid today. I throw, just throw that out, because I live in a, very conservative religious area. What if I started teaching people meditation? Somebody might freak out. Somebody else might not like the word hypnosis because they watched too many Hollywood movies and never took time to really understand what it was. In fact, it was interesting. Not too long ago, I sent out an email to the mental health professionals on my list about a hypnosis certification course I was doing, and somebody sent me back an email saying it was demonic and that they wanted to be removed from my email list because I was downright evil. Which is kind of funny because Jerry Falwell actually signed my diploma, and for those who don't know, I actually was a minister in two different churches, both the Evangelical Free Church, which I always refer to as Northern Swedish Baptist in Minnesota, and also the Christian Church, the Disciples of Christ, which of course is the fifth largest denomination in the USA. So, my doctorate is actually from a Christian school in Seattle. So it's with a focus on urban ministry. So I'm not really a heretic. I just happen to understand these terms can sometimes be loaded. I don't feel a need to try to overcome these terms. I just use whatever works for my clients. I used to do a lot of work with probationers. I used to call it a damn assignment, and that worked. And so whatever we call it, it doesn't really matter as long as it's effective.
It doesn't, and we can just utilize who our clients are. I think I do like to make the distinction between meditation and mindfulness meditation, because sometimes I'll have people complain that they've tried to meditate before and they can't do that. In mindfulness, of course, your mind is there and thinking of images and sensations and feelings, so it's quite a hands-on experiential thing rather than trying to empty your mind.
Great. Shernay's asking a great question, and I had to think about it for a minute. I actually own a restaurant, so sometimes my mind gets confused. And Shernay said, "What was the second hierarchy before waitress?" And I'm like, waitress? And so I started thinking about our waitress, because we actually fired a cocktail waitress last night. And I'm like, how does Shernay know about that? And then I realized you're talking about something entirely different. I'm actually going to put a link in the chat room. Kelly, if you'll talk while I search something that is actually the whole process, so you'll have a sort of a written copy of that, Shernay.
Okay, so I know that Richard has quite a few resources on meditations, on mindfulness, and if you do go to his ICBCH Facebook group, you'll see lots of resources contained within there. He also wrote a really great book called Magic Words, and it was, while it's targeted for the hypnosis market, it's also great for therapists because there is such power in words. For example, when I tell clients, I might have a couple, and I'll say, let's pretend. That immediately opens up a door in their mind. It touches a little bit into the child part of their imagination that didn't have limits, that could daydream about any possibilities. And I might ask them, what would you like to happen? Describe to me the perfect day for the two of you. What would you be doing? And they pick that ball up and they run with it. So just using the right words, let's pretend, imagine, can make all the difference in setting that course for them. And I like to let them find solutions. And I saw recently a reference to a therapist describing her work, and this was in the context of doing grief therapy. And she described herself as a Sherpa. And I really liked that. I thought that was pretty cool. You think about a lot of our clients, they're struggling up a mountain, they're going on the wrong paths, they're hitting the switchbacks, they're hitting dead ends. They need a Sherpa to guide them, sometimes help them carry the load. And when they have us at their side, they know that they're going to reach the top of the mountain. So, again, just, yeah.
By the way, Shanae asked, what was the process there? I didn't have a write-up in my files that I had typed up of the loving kindness meditation, but again, I didn't create it. It's been around for 5,000 years. So I just Googled it. I Googled loving kindness meditation. So if you're watching the replay later and you're like, wait, what's the link? Just go to Google and type in loving kindness meditation, and bam, you're going to find a bunch of people who have written it up. It's actually a write-up of it and the process I use in one of the books I wrote. I wrote a book titled Contextual Hypnotherapy Scripts. It's in there, but you may as well just use Google unless you have my book. And then it is I figured I could find it on my computer, but I can't. I don't see any questions. You guys haven't asked any questions tonight, or not too many, but that's okay. Hopefully you've been taking it all in. We've covered a lot of information tonight, and you have the video, of course, to review. And I will post along with this the video of Michael going through that emotional detox process. If you have any questions between now and then, feel free to email me or Kelly or both of us. It's been great having you, and we'll look forward
to Richard, next week you've got Nathan on, don't you?
Yeah, next week, instead of Kelly, I'll be on with Nathan Welch from the UK, and he's an expert in acceptance and commitment therapy, which we're going to be talking about as it applies specifically to working with couples. And he co-wrote a book with Kelly, so it'll be great to be here with Nathan.
Thank you for joining us. That was fun.
All right, great to have everybody. Thank you.
All right, bye-bye.